Hey, how's it going, everybody? Well, I took my original 1987 Buick Regal Grand National. In my case, it's a Turbo T Limited, which is the same engine. And I mocked up the Stage 2 heads to fit the new intake Stage 2 competition racing manifold. As you can see, it fits really nice. Look at that nice intake manifold that fits right with the Stage 2 Buick heads. I bolted them up just to mock them up to check the fitment. And that intake manifold fits awesome. Now this is the 87 Buick Regal Turbo T engine. Same thing as the Grand National engine. And by switching the heads, I can fit this special Edelbrock Torquer competition manifold. Look at that. Edelbrock Victor Stage 2 Racing Competition Intake Manifold. And with the Stage 2 heads bolted up, I got them mocked up. It fits the engine like a glove. So this is how my engine is going to look like when I pull the 4.5 or 274 cubic inch stroker from my 87 Buick. I'm going to get those heads built up and put them on the racing stroker engine and put that in the 1980 Buick Regal Sport Coupe with blow-through turbo carbureting, which will not need any computers whatsoever. The only thing I'm going to put on there that's electronic is the distributor and the MSD Boost Timing Master, which will improve the spark and retard the timing. 1 pound, every pound of boost, it'll retard the timing 1 degree. So that'll be the only computerized thing I put on the 80 Buick Regal that'll be my race car. Now this engine here is the original engine from my 87 Turbo T Limited. I just pulled the heads off. Here's the original exhaust manifolds. I put all the bolts in a bag. There's the valve cover. There's the rocker arms and the push rods. And here is the original Buick Regal heads. As you can see, they're totally different. Look at the size of these intake ports. They're not that big in comparison to these intake ports that I showed you on the other Stage 2 racing heads. So I put both left-hand, I took both left-hand and right-hand heads off of the 87's original engine so we could look at them. And as you can see, these valves are pretty big from the factory. The original Grand National heads have a nice big valve. But the intake ports are different and they're not as large as the Stage 2 heads and the intake ports. Let's pull this thing off. Look at the size of those intake ports. They're huge. Look at that. Big old intake ports in comparison. See? Big intake ports. Big intake ports. And this manifold fits just right. Lines up with the bolt holes and everything with these new Stage 2 racing heads. Now the bolt pattern on the exhaust manifold is going to be different, so I'm going to have to find some different exhaust headers to go with the turbocharged. And again, we'll look at the original heads. These are the original Buick Turbo T Limited or Grand National heads. They're quite great heads from the factory. But the Stage 2 have much larger ports, and when I get done, it's going to have much larger valves. 2.02 intake, 1.60 inch exhaust. And this is going to be a great intake manifold to go blow-through turbocharging. But I figured I'd show you guys how it looks on the 87's block, because I have to rebuild this engine anyway to put it back in the 87 Regal. I'm going to refresh this 3.8 sequential fuel injected turbo engine with its original heads and valve covers and exhaust manifolds. And I'm going to reinstall it in the 87, take the racing engine out of the 87 and put it in the 1980 Regal with these stage 2 heads and intake manifold. I just wanted to show you guys what it all looked like bolted on an engine. And I just installed a couple bolts just to mock it up. And the manifold fits just right. So these are the correct heads. These stage 2 heads go perfectly with the stage 2 Edelbrock Victor Series stage 2 racing intake manifold. This manifold was used during the NASCAR years of the 80s when they had the NASCAR Buick Regals with the 3.8 V6, but they were basically 4.1s that were bored and stroked to 274 cubic inches. Yes, quite an engine, and it made a lot of power on those NASCARs back in the 80s. So I'm going to duplicate those efforts and put that engine in my 1980 Buick Regal Turbo Sport Coupe. And then I'm going to prepare this particular engine with its original heads and everything else and reinstall it in my 1987 Turbo T Limited, which currently has my race engine, which is a 274 cubic inch stroker or 4.5 liter. Now, originally these engines were 3.8 liters or 231 cubic inches. So, wow. This engine with those stage 2 heads and that intake manifold going in my 1980 Buick Regal Sport Coupe is going to be quite the race engine. And hopefully, if everything goes right, I'll have it done before next year's races begin at Top Gun Raceway. Well, I hope you enjoyed this video, and you guys have a great weekend. Mad boosting.